What should I do if my wife is telling me she doesn't love me, never did? We are still together, but she doesn't even want to spend time with me. I didn't yell at her. I didn't do anything. She is just saying she doesn't want me. What should I do? Cry a lot. And don't leave her. And pray for the grace not to be angry in a brutal way. When it says, husbands, don't, in Colossians 3, what's the word? Can't remember the exact word, but don't dishearten or put down or make your wife feel endangered or unloved. Pray that God would help you to continue in that. There are times when the church or individual Christians act like this towards their husband, Jesus Christ. I mean, like every day maybe. They get up in the morning and there's the Lord waiting to talk with them and to have some fellowship with them. And they go to the newspaper. And then they go to the television. And then they go into the car and they turn the radio on. And they go all day long and he's saying, excuse me? How does he deal with us when we treat him as though we really don't want to be with him? And the answer is he's merciful and he keeps coming back and he keeps awakening and helping. So I would say, stay there, pray for grace, keep loving the children, be strong for the children, and say to her, I made a promise to you, and you made one to me, and I believe that God can awaken again what you've lost. And if you say you never had it, I think you did, and I think God could restore it, and I would like us to just keep working on it. And I'll do whatever I can. I'm willing to go to counseling with you if that would help. But I'm here to stay, and I'm for you and not against you. And then he prays and joins with a band of guys to pray that the miracle of awakened love would happen in his wife. How should a husband and wife manage having opposite sex drives? Does it make a difference if one partner's lack of sex drive is from a medical condition? Well, let me take the first part. Paul addresses this pretty directly in 1 Corinthians 7, in the first paragraph of that chapter, when he says to the Christian husband and wife, do not withhold from each other, sometimes translated, your conjugal rights, which means sexual intercourse. Do not withhold that. Does not the wife's body belong to the husband? Does not the husband's body belong to the wife? Now those are radical and dangerous statements. To say that your body is mine. What balances it is she says the same thing. And I don't want your body on my body. I mean, so this is what that text says is compete with each other about how to bring the other person joy, to maximize the other person's gladness, satisfaction. Now, that does not solve the problems, but it gives you an orientation that is so wholesome and so helpful. Because it doesn't solve the problems because if she says, I'm too tired for this, for sexual intercourse. And he's communicating, it would be really nice right now. She should give and he should relent. That's the way it should be. I mean, his heart should be, I'm not going to make you do this, no matter how strong I feel. And hers should be, I'm here for you, no matter how tired I am. Now, how does that bring a solution? It's a matter of degrees, I think, probably, and who at that moment is maybe the most sanctified, who's experiencing the grace to yield. And I just think if you preach hard to a husband, serve her. Don't manipulate her, use her. Don't turn her into a mannequin for masturbation. Don't treat her that way. She's a human. You want her all there. You don't want to use her. You want her there, enjoying you. That's the point of this. Mutual consummation, psychologically, spiritually, and now expressed physically. And those are the best moments of all, is when the physical event is the consummation of a spiritual, psychological, whole event. So I think we should be preaching to men. Don't think of your wife as an instrument to be used for sexual satisfaction. Think of her as a whole person who has her own deep longings and desires, and you want to live in such a way as to draw her in. And that, of course, foreplay begins with whether you're washing dishes or not. That's foreplay. If you help her wash the dishes after supper, if you help her clean up, if you serve this woman, this is about sex, right? This is because if you she's made a nice supper, you finish it, you go plop yourself on the couch, watch TV for 3 hours, get red hot sexually because you're watching 50 sexually connoted, whatever the word is, advertisements, and then it's 10:30, say, I'm ready. She's not going to be ready. That's ridiculous. So, am I getting at this? Probably not. How should a husband and wife manage having opposite sex drives? What I'm saying is they manage it by loving each other like they love themselves, and by not being demanding, but by each trying to serve the other. And they meet somewhere in the middle in a way that both of them perceive the other wants the good of the other. Neither feels used by the other. And the wife, I'm going to use her because it's more typical that a wife has less desire for sex than a husband, though that's not universally true. She will want to accommodate his stronger desires, and he will want to not give the impression that she's only there for sexual satisfaction. And they'll find a way in the middle as Christ gives them grace and humility. This last part of the question, does it make a difference if one partner's lack of sex drives is from a medical condition? Well, I'm sure it makes a difference. And I think what the man or the woman would want to do is to come alongside the one who's got the medical condition and empathize and say, what's it like? And then work at it. I mean, I know a couple that sexual intercourse is painful for her for whatever reason, and it's not clear whether the reason is entirely physical or whether there are psychological components. I know another situation, this ended in divorce, and I did the marriage, and I was just heartbroken. It's a long time ago. Nobody about them knows who this is anymore. Where as soon as they got married, it emerged that she thought sex was filthy. Her mother had drilled into her. She had seen it in the parents' relationship. To have sex is to do a dirty thing. And therefore, she was constantly pulling away, and felt like his desires were unclean desires. And that never got fixed. They broke up. No matter, I couldn't provide the help that they needed. She was deeply, deeply wrong about that and deeply wounded by her background and maybe other things. So I know that physical and psychological things, not just different sex drive in an ordinary way, do make things extremely difficult, and I would say it calls for a lot of patient, loving care so that the person who's got the condition feels understood, feels listened to, so that you're not just saying, get yourself fixed because that's what marriage is supposed to be, but rather coming alongside, doing whatever medically, psychologically can be done in order to find a pattern that's workable. There aren't any ideal sexual experiences in the world, I don't think. Every woman probably has a picture in mind of what she would or wouldn't like, and every man has a picture in mind, and they're never identical. I don't think they're ever, maybe once in 1,000, you would say, this marriage represents her receiving, giving exactly what she wants, and he receiving exactly what she wants. They're always in total harmony all the time. That just never happens virtually, which means marriage is a test case for sanctification and for self-denial, and it works both ways. What should a wife's submission to her husband look like if he's an abuser? Oh my. Part of that answer is clearly going to depend on what kind of abuse we're dealing with here. How serious this is. Is her life in danger? Or is this verbal unkindness? I'm not sure what the person who asked the question had in mind. So let me just talk about maybe different kinds. A woman's submission to her husband is rooted in the Word of God, calling her to be, for the Lord's sake, submissive to Him, which means she always has a higher allegiance, namely to Christ. And therefore Christ's Word governs her life. And Christ has many words besides be submissive. Be submissive is not an absolute, because her Lord has other things to tell her, so that if the husband tells her something that contradicts what the Lord tells her, then she's got a crisis there of, to whom do I submit now? And clearly she submits to Jesus above the Lord, of her husband. And the reason she's submitting to her husband is because of her prior superior submission to the Lord. So, if this man, for example, is calling her to engage in abusive acts willingly, group sex or something really weird, bizarre, harmful, that clearly would be sin, then the way she submits, and I really think this is possible, it's kind of paradoxical. She's not going to go there. I'm just saying, no, she's not going to do what Jesus would disapprove, even though the husband is asking her to do it. She's going to say, however, something like, honey, I want so much to follow you as my leader. God calls me to do that, and I would love to do that. It would be sweet to me if I could enjoy your leadership. And so then she would say, but if you ask me to do this, require this of me, then I can't go there. Now that's one kind of situation. Just a word on the other kind. If it's not requiring her to sin, but simply hurting her, then I think she endures verbal abuse for a season, and she endures perhaps being smacked one night, and then she seeks help from the church. I mean, every time I deal with somebody in this, I find the ultimate solution under God in the church. In other words, this man should be disciplined. This man should be disciplined. She should have a safe place in a body of Christ where she goes, and then the people in the church deal with him. She can't deal with him by herself. So the short answer, I think, is the church is really crucial here. To step in, be her strength. Say to this man, you can't do this. You cannot do this. That's not what we allow. That's not what Christ calls you to be. So I can't go into all the details, but I would say, I would say to a woman, come to a church that you feel safe in, tell them the case, let the leaders step in and help you navigate the difficulties here. My spouse is being nominated for church leadership, but our household, especially our marriage, is not in order. What should I do? So that, I assume, is a wife probably saying that a husband is being nominated for something like the eldership. And the elders, according to the Bible, are supposed to have houses that are in order, children well managed, and an admirable relationship with a husband or a wife. And she's saying she knows things they don't know, or either they don't care. Now, whether it's because they don't know or it's because they don't care is going to make a difference in how she deals with this. But I think, at least as one elder who is recruiting other elders, would want to know. And I think biblically, she would have a responsibility to share with an elder, maybe one or two that she knows, and say, have you considered interviewing, or have you considered asking these questions to my husband to see whether you think his understanding of the qualifications and his living them out is yours? So I think that's what she should do, is approach an elder. Now, if they're, so that's based on the fact that they may not know the situation. If they knew it, they would, I hope, redemptively enter his life and say, come on, we need to spend a year now working on this, because we see evidences of leadership in your life and biblical faithfulness in your life, but here's a piece that needs work before we go forward. That's wonderful when that happens, especially if he's agreeable. If she's in a church where the elders are just lackadaisical and they don't even think that way, then she's got another issue. She's got to find, I hope, somebody who would have some sense of empathy with her concern and see if they can help the elders grow in their understanding of biblical criteria. But that would be more complicated, because they may just say, oh, you're being too picky or whatever. And in that case, I think she would just have to pray and let it go, because she can't control what the church does. She might say, and I would encourage her to say to her husband, you know, as long as we haven't got this resolved, or the kids are this way, do you think you should maybe wait? So I think that would probably be wise. I'm a believer. My husband isn't. He makes all our family's money and obviously doesn't like the idea of tithing. What should I do? Well, I think the simplest thing is to say, if you originate no income, God doesn't expect you to give any income. So that's a simple answer. I could stop right there. But that's not going to satisfy her, probably, and she wants more than that. And so I think probably the way a husband like this would work is he would probably say to her, she could say to him, can I count any of your income as mine and have discretion over it? Because, you know, I work. I keep this house. I keep our children. I'm full-time here. This is a partnership. I know that you go outside, but I do the home. I make this happen. Could I? And not to deceive him in any way, just totally open and above board. He knows where she's going. Can I count some of this as discretionary for me? I know that it's not your preference to give money to what you don't believe in, but you know that I believe in this, and it's helping me, I hope, be a really good wife for you. I'm faithful to you. I serve you. I'm physically and sexually there for you. I admire many things about you. I'm glad I'm married to you. I think a Christian wife can say those kinds of things to an unbelieving husband. And then meekly and humbly say, may I know you don't want us to give 10% of our income away, but can we just come up with a number that is mine to work with? And I would guess that a husband, an unbelieving husband, would do that. At least that would be the direction I would go if I were. Then she tithes what she senses and he agrees she's getting because of her engagement here. I mean, it's sad when you have to think about it that way. In our marriage, I like to think about all my money is Noelle's, and all hers is mine. If she gets some royalties because she does her children's book and puts it in the bank, I want to think that's our money. We can give that to the church. We can do whatever we want. And everything that I get from the church, I want to say it's there. I don't like separate bank accounts. I just think we ought to be totally at each other's disposal and have our money be each other's. But that's not going to work where a husband doesn't have your same values. He's not following Christ. And so that would be, I think, my approach to her is seek his willingness to count some of the money as hers, and then ask if she can just do with it according to her own priorities.